Donald Trump is now saying he has canceled scheduled military strikes against Iran tonight because of, quote, discussions with Iran. The latest swerve from Donald Trump and his non-strategy to get the United States of America out of a deeply unpopular war with Iran. Hours earlier, Trump had threatened to hit Iran, quote, very hard again tonight in what would have been the third straight night of airstrikes. He also threatened to take over Iran's oil-rich Karg Island, which handles 90% of the country's crude exports, and to take, quote, total control of Iran's oil and gas markets. Donald Trump offered no explanation for how he had planned to pull any of those things off, but it would almost certainly require putting U.S. men and women, U.S. troops on the ground to be successful. Well, the New York Times reports that strikes yesterday destroyed what appears to be a drinking water facility on Iran's southern coast near the Strait of Hormuz, and that, quote, it is unclear if the U.S. intentionally struck the water facilities or knew what was in the buildings, but deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure could constitute a war crime under international law. In response to that, New York Times report, CENTCOM's spokesperson said this, that the military is aware of the reports and is looking into them. I want to bring in our military analyst, Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. He served as the commanding general of the U.S. Army in Europe. Also joining us, senior national security reporter David Rohde. David, you were here like exactly 24 hours ago at the same point in the same hour. What changed? Why does Trump back off the threat today?
Look, the best case scenario is that Iran has somehow changed its position on its enriched uranium, on its control of the Strait of Hormuz, and on its demands for its frozen assets to be returned. The problem is there's no indication that Iran has changed its position. So I don't know why the president has gone from threatening to take Karg Island and, heavily bomb Iran as well to we're on the verge of signing a peace agreement. And I think you cited this earlier, but different Iranian outlets, one Iranian official told Inzamam Rashid, our colleague, and then separately FARS, it's a semi-state-controlled news agency, Iranian officials are saying right now they have not agreed to any memorandum of understanding. There is no agreement. So the president's talking about a signing ceremony in Europe this weekend, but Iran is saying it has agreed to nothing.
I want to ask you about the water facility as well, David. This is from the New York Times. An analysis of satellite image and videos suggests precision U.S. strikes on Iranian water facility. Iranian state media reports that the U.S. had hit water storage buildings, and a local official said that water was cut off to more than 20,000 people living in a town and villages nearby. Temperatures in that area have reached above 100 degrees Fahrenheit this week. How do the attacks on things like water facilities move Iran toward what Trump wants, which is to get them to the negotiating table? I would think it would harden the Iranian people's support for the most extreme positions that their government could take.
It would. And if you systematically attack water systems in this region, it's an incredible escalation. There's a chance that this was one power plant that was mistakenly bombed by the U.S. It is so different in the region because desalination plants are critical across the Middle East. Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, if Iran were to retaliate and hit a desalination plant there, you would have millions of people without water to drink in Dubai, in Kuwait City, and in Tehran itself. So neither side, there's been allegations a few times about Iran hitting a desalination plant in the UAE, and now you have this strike in Iran. Maybe it was intentional, maybe it was supposed to be a warning, but if that was the actual strategy of the U.S. to do that, it's a very dangerous strategy because across the region they need desalination plants, and it's seen as, until now, it's been something you just did not do. If it's systematic, it's a war crime. But this is a region that needs drinking water, and they can only get it from these plants.
General Hertling, what do you see as you take in the events of the last 24 hours?
Well, we can talk about a series of different events, Nicole. The first one, just to carry on what David just said about the desalinization plant. We heard the president this morning say on Fox News that they had spent $250 million on weapons last night. And that's probably accurate because all of these are precision weapons. They're hitting targets that were probably in a target folder that CENTCOM had and were prepared to strike. So whenever you have that many targets, and you saw the pictures that the New York Times showed in their article, it doesn't look like a desalinization plant. It just looks like a big block of concrete in the middle of a small town. But that shows that sometimes targeting processes really don't understand some of the various targets that they're hitting and the effects on the ground. But I want to bring in another part of this because, we watched a couple of weeks ago Admiral Cooper testify before Congress, and he was really put on a hot seat by several senators who were asking him about Secretary Hegseth's comment about giving no quarters to our enemy. He dodged those questions, and to me, that really was very uncomfortable for me watching him do this. But on the 26th of May, Admiral Cooper put out a memo to his forces about protecting civilian life and how it's a part of our professional fighting forces culture. And he said, quote, I'm quoting it now, "It is embedded in how we plan, how we target, and how we fight." And he then said, "Our commitment to the law of armed conflict is not a constraint on our lethality." That's a poke at Secretary Hegseth. He said, "It's the source of our legitimacy, the reason our partners choose to stand with us, and a direct contributor to our operational effectiveness." So all of those things are an indicator to me that he's abiding by the rule of law and the law of land warfare and the Geneva Convention. So if this strike against a desalinization plant was a mistake, and it likely was, then, it is one of those kinds of things that happen in war. But it also tells me that the targeteers of CENTCOM got to be a little bit better in terms of their refinement of the targets.
I mean, is it possible that he's saying those things out loud because there's a question the world over about Hegseth's direction and leadership of the Pentagon?
I actually think it's a message to the troops. I've given those kind of messages too, because you have to reinforce the culture and the dynamics of the military profession. And, he can't go against his boss in public. He sidestepped a lot of the questions on Congress, but he's telling his soldiers or, all of his military forces, this is what I believe and this is what you should believe, and we better get it straight. I think he's basically reinforcing what all of us as military professionals grow up with in our training.